But then this can be seen also in the simple initiation ritual, where a child has to die, you might say, to its infantile psyche and come back as a self-responsible adult.
Listen.
No infected.
No infected.
We got lucky.
Lucky? No. Now, you see, I believe that everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
I do. And I can prove it to you. Now, a few weeks back, I sent a group of men out to a nearby town to look for food. Only a few came back. They said that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man. And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason.
On June 14th, 2013, Santa Monica-based game developer Naughty Dog released The Last of Us for the PlayStation 3. A story-driven action-adventure game following two survivors of a deadly virus, Joel and Ellie, as they trek across post-apocalyptic America in pursuit of a cure. The Last of Us was beloved by players and critics alike on its release, praised for its attention to detail, immersive gameplay, and emotional storytelling. The success of the title would lead to a remaster a year later for the PlayStation 4, a full-blown remake a near decade later for the PlayStation 5, and of course, a live-action show on HBO. And though The Last of Us is undoubtedly a product of different stories, characters, and games preceding it, the way in which game directors Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley honed their vision into an unforgettable experience is a fundamental part of why The Last of Us has become one of the most celebrated and influential video games in the greater history of the medium. However, it can be hard to explain the brilliance of The Last of Us to anyone who hasn't played it. The story is very straightforward, leaning on storytelling devices that are 10 times simpler than Hideo Kojima's least convoluted Metal Gear game. Its apocalyptic setting, though a tad more standout due to the real-life inspired cordyceps virus, is still fundamentally a zombie apocalypse. And in the same time, players battled in thrilling shootouts, chased caravans, and fell out of planes in 2011's Uncharted 3, The Last of Us saw players sneaking, throwing bricks, and floating pallets across dank sewers.
Oh, there you go. That's smart.
Even after playing it for myself, I found it difficult to express exactly what it was about such a minimalistic experience that had struck me so deeply. In truth, you can't understand The Last of Us until you have the right perspective.
Stay back! Jimmy, I am warning you! Where the hell you been? You have any idea what's going on out there?
I got some notion.
Holy shit. You got blood all over you.
It ain't mine. Let's just get out of here.
Not of the grizzled, flannel-wearing survivor on the game cover, but a little girl, helpless in a way that everybody can identify through their youth. You can do nothing but watch the world around you burn into chaos, and even as her father, you can do little but run from it. Run from the clawing darkness of the city and into some kind of light, if only to learn that the safety of that light was anything but true.
Oh no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know.
In both an instant and an eternity, the real truth sinks down like a dagger.
Sarah. Baby.
Sarah's death not only foreshadowed a darker and deeper story than anything Naughty Dog had created before, but an omen of truth more familiar and deadly than one could bear.
Please. Please.
A plague of feelings, each less comforting than the last. A whirlwind of confusion and pain, too fast to escape. Flashes of terror and despair, once startling as ever, only to now render one weary and numb. This is part the never-ending nightmare of Joel Miller, part the status quo of Cordyceps America, and part the lowliest prison any human can be trapped in. Resigned to that prison, and stuck in time, all that's left of us, the last of us, is but the last line of defense between man and monster. What is it, exactly? We can feel it, but we won't know it until we've reached the end of Joel's perilous sentence. As the Firefly saying goes, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. In 2023, perhaps one of the most unique affordances of retelling a story in the gaming medium is how the advancement of technology can effectively deepen the player's connection to the world, deepen their connection to faces like Tess, Marlene, the dozens of other survivors in the Boston quarantine zone, and especially Joel. The effect of his 20-year nightmare were there before, but now every wrinkle and strand of gray hair depicts a battleground of grief. The peeling paint on walls, the puddle and moss-covered sidewalks, piles of trash flowing into the streets, scoring in grime as far as the eye can see, and the warm rays of light too far above the streets all feel reflective of Joel. Like the back of his hand, quietly and unflinchingly navigated despite its complete disrepair.
I'm coming.
Only a man so internally broken could be Tess's best enforcer. For the world hasn't just molded Joel into a survivor, but a bounty hunter, a smuggler, and when permitted, an unstoppable force of violence.
I am sure that there's been multiple moments where Joel has loaded that gun with the pure intention of ending it all. I think that there is a silent contract that he has with Sarah. There's no absolution in that. That's not the solution to the problem. So what is the solution? The solution is that I survive.
While the last shred of Joel's humanity rests entombed in his broken watch, he and Tess play this world's deadly game. Up until they cut a deal with Queen Firefly Marlene to smuggle her most precious cargo.
Fuck away from her!
Let her go.
Before she even had a name, the 14-year-old girl gamers would come to know as Ellie was already one of Naughty Dog's longest characters in the making, inspired by a cut sequence from Uncharted 2. It was called the Mute Girl. Allied with a rebel group in a war-torn city, a mute teenage girl would have led Nathan Drake away from their camp to a beautiful, night-lit vista of the city. The moment inspired a poignant question. What kind of bond could a player form with another character through gameplay? How deep could it go, and how far could you take it? For Straley, the lead director of Uncharted 2, the question quickly evolved into the character of Tenzin, a Tibetan explorer players encounter late in the game.
Tessa?
I'm not so good with charades, pal.
But for Druckmann, the question would evolve into another. What would it be like to live in this world? A world as foreign to you as it is familiar to someone else. In Ellie, Druckmann saw an immigrant. Druckmann saw himself, a 10-year-old boy who fled from Israel to the US with his family in 1989. His memories and experience of being lost in a world so radically unlike the one he grew up in are embedded in the very roots of The Last of Us and Naughty Dog's atypical approach to the apocalypse genre. Aside from the major cities of Boston and Pittsburgh, the latter where Druckmann lived when he attended Carnegie Mellon University, the selection of locations in The Last of Us are not what you'd expect from the developers of the globe-trotting Uncharted games. the town of Lincoln, Massachusetts, a hydroelectric plant in Jackson, Wyoming, a university in Boulder, Colorado, the Silver Lake Ski Resort, and Salt Lake City, Utah. All places with a particular vibe and feel more distinct from the last, mirroring a young Druckmann's fixation and appreciation for the many landscapes of the US, viewed from the back window of his parents' car.
You know, I've never been this close to the outside. Look how dark it is.
Sheltered in the Boston QZ her whole life, Ellie sees the world with much the same innocence and wonder Druckmann did. A stark contrast to the world-weary Joel, the face of rural Americana, who can, perhaps, see nothing but the shadow of a world that once was. There's an inherent conflict to the immense disparity in the two characters' perspectives. A clash as intense as the dominion of nature and the decaying urban world, splayed about almost every step of the post-cordyceps America that players traverse to escort Ellie. As oppositional as light and dark, where a single, purposeful ray of sunshine at the end of a hallway is your guide out of oppressive darkness. And, in some ways, as shocking and horrific as the battle between man and monster. For as much beauty as there is in the unseen world, there is equal amounts horror, danger, and darkness. The risk of becoming something that will destroy you if you don't try your damnedest.
Oh, Christ.
Oops, right?
To deliver this world's cure, Ellie doesn't just need an escort. She needs an optimist. Someone to lead a scared girl to the other side of the darkness, believing there is light. She needs Tess. But instead, all she'll get is Joel.
I don't think Joel deals in those terms. He doesn't deal in terms of hope and even humanity. He deals in the currency of survival and need.
Ow. I don't even know.
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess. Ever. In fact, we just keep our histories to ourselves.
Dimension means contradiction. Three words that, in essence, suggest that the depth or truth of a character is revealed in the contradiction between how that character behaves and who they really are beneath the surface. It's a sentiment that ripples across the Last of Us world, giving form to the scattered fragments, feelings, and ideas of seemingly idiosyncratic moments, and it originates in the pages of Robert McKee's 1997 Story, a book Neil Druckmann discovered in college when studying to write the kinds of comics he grew up with as a kid.
Ellie, found another one of them comics you've been reading.
McKee is widely regarded as the most acclaimed story consultant of the 21st century, and the sheer wisdom bound from front to back of Story perfectly affirms why. To McKee, the sole responsibility of a storyteller is to tell the truth. Each tale you create says to the audience, I believe life is like this. Every moment must be filled with your passionate conviction, or we smell a phony. Though McKee has long been a reference for screenwriters of TV and film, The Last of Us was perhaps the first time his insights were directly applied to a video game. According to McKee, stories are made up of events, or scenes, that create meaningful change in the life situation of the character that is expressed and experienced in terms of value and achieved through conflict. When McKee stresses value, he doesn't mean virtue or morality, but a quality of the human experience that is often presented dianically, as positive or negative. as strong or weak, or as warm or distant. If the value-charged condition of a character doesn't change with at least 1 degree of perceptible difference by the end of a scene, then, effectively, nothing meaningful has happened. And the conflict through which that change occurs invokes action, invokes a choice that reveals the essential nature of who a character is. The greater the pressure placed on a character, the deeper the revelation revealed by their choice.
Get off your ass on your feet.
Joel and Ellie's reactions to meeting Bill, a near-deranged loner who's rigged the town of Lincoln with bombs and traps, perfectly illustrate McKee's ideas at work. Ellie chooses to be rebellious and is totally adverse to the authority of someone with zero respect for her. Joel never informs Bill of Tess's fate and is particularly quiet when Bill rambles about losing his partner, Frank.
Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing, getting you killed. So you know what I did? I wisened the fuck up. And I realized it's gotta be just me.
While Bill exposes Ellie's internal need for more than an escort, Joel is confronted with the internal conflict of letting someone like his daughter into his life, with the possibility of reliving a fate worse than death, and the alternative of depending only on yourself, even if it means you'll know only bitterness and delusion.
That's how you feel. Well, fuck you too, Frank.
As a result of Lincoln, the value-charged conditions of both characters change. A more equipped, more determined, yet emotionally stubborn Joel, a braver, brasher, but more codependent Ellie, and it continues to change through each and every chapter of The Last of Us, slowly dispelling the contradiction inherent to Joel and Ellie's being and amplifying that contradiction in every arena of storytelling imaginable. In the design of a beautiful world ravaged by societal collapse, with terrifying clickers coated in a menagerie of colorful spores, and most directly, through a pillar most developers had not charted for storytelling until 2013, the gameplay. By encouraging the player to take actions Joel would take, you're taught how to role-play as Joel. A button press allowing you to boost Ellie over a fence is presented with as much apprehension as Joel feels in trusting her.
Now just open it, nothing else.
Sure thing.
But in turn, doing this action over and over builds both in the player and Joel an expectation and dependency on Ellie, despite his outward resistance.
How about you let me go first and keep your voice down?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what makes our medium unique, is that you get to experience things yourself. When we have, let's say, Joel and Ellie walk through a forest, we can write dialogue that actually reflects Ellie seeing a forest for the first time. As a player, you get to you appreciate the graphics of the game, and then you get to hear this girl comment about it, and you're like, oh right, that is kind of pretty.
You are effectively in step with Joel's conflicts, his actions, and his value-charged condition. Even if you don't always agree with Joel, you know exactly what to do when planted in his shoes. For deep within the protagonist, the audience recognizes a certain shared humanity, something about the character that strikes a chord. In that moment of recognition, the audience suddenly and instinctively wants the protagonist to achieve whatever it is that he desires. And so, you'll do anything Joel would do to survive. You'll enact the most brutal kill, craft the deadliest weapon, or skulk by danger in fear of being ripped apart. Through this connection, you will see Joel's truth for what it is, even if he refuses. We all carry hope in our hearts, no matter the odds against us. Therefore, a protagonist who's literally hopeless, who hasn't even the minimal capacity to achieve his desire, cannot interest us. Beneath Joel's ruggish facade, there has to be more than an escort. Maybe not an optimist, but a flicker, if not the rising flame, of a father.
We stick together.
We see it, and we can feel it, as much as we've scraped with the contrary. as much as we've been trapped in the darkness, running for our lives, completely alone. As much as we've drowned in the gap between Joel and Ellie.
I shot the hell out of that guy, huh?
We know these characters need each other, but the truth, deep in the dark Joel knows all too well, is that this is no world for a little girl to grow up in.
There's some pretty gnarly stuff in here.
Ellie!
No world where she can learn how to be a responsible adult, be compassionate and moral, or presume the reins necessary to change the world. And so, Joel won't raise a little girl. Joel will raise a survivor.
All right, now, you're going to lean right into that stock, because it is going to kick a hell of a lot more than any baby rifle.
Okay.
Go and pull the bolt back. Grab it right there. Just tug it. And as soon as you fire, you're going to want to get another round in there quick. Listen to me. If I get into trouble down there, you make every shot count. Yeah.
I got this.
All right.
Blunt and unapologetic, grounded in reality, anything but simple, and anything but enchanting. It is the truth. Yet rarely is the truth so easily acknowledged. For Ellie and Sam, all they want to believe is that they're part of a grander story. Aligned with these characters, we want to believe in a grander story. One where Joel conquers his demons and Ellie saves the world. Light at the end of a dizzying tunnel and divine purpose to otherwise meaningless suffering. In part because we're used to this story and because we think we need this story. Whether of Joel or Ellie, it's not a grounded, cynical protagonist we want. We want a hero with 1,000 faces. Written by renowned mythologist Joseph Campbell in 1949, The Hero with 1,000 Faces is widely considered to be one of the most influential studies of mythology and storytelling ever conceived. The idea at its center, the hero's journey, or the monomyth, has been the template for thousands of stories told since its formulation, depicting a cycle of storytelling told again and again throughout the world's myths. The revitalizing transformation of life and character that gives a hero purpose. Although Naughty Dog has never cited Campbell's work the way they have McKee's, there's no shortage of essays and Reddit threads to be found comparing the structure of The Last of Us to The Hero's Journey. There's an ordinary world in the Boston QZ, a crossing of the threshold in The Passage Beyond Its Walls, a special world in the locales that follow, trials, allies, and enemies in Puzzles, Fellow Survivors, and Ruthless Hunters, and many more identifiable stages and archetypes. The hero's journey has served many purposes, but its primary benefit is to uplift, to inspire others to follow their bliss, walk the path that leads one to their destiny, and empower a belief in change.
It's a cycle. It's a going and a return.
Unlike the classical heroes, we're not going on our journey to save the world, but to save ourselves.
And in doing that, you save the world. The influence of a vital person vitalizes. There's no doubt about it.
And no matter how many times we see the monomyth in our cinematic media, we're never reluctant to embrace it. By the same philosophy found in McKee's story, the hope in our hearts leads us to aspire for more than who we are. For virtues of justice, bravery, self-sacrifice, and charity that, one by one, may light up the world.
Henry says that they've moved on. that they're with their families, like in heaven. Do you think that's true?
I mean, I'd like to believe it.
We want a hero's journey.
But you don't.
I guess not.
But all we'll get
Sam?
is the truth.
Shit, he's turning!
Campbell and McKee's philosophies can overlap. Heroic sacrifice is not unfounded, and honest virtue has inspired real-world treasure. But the fundamental principles between them, follow your bliss and write the truth, respectively, clash more than they cooperate. In a world like The Last of Us, where compassion and diplomacy is a death sentence, what hope is there to light up the world?
That's my fucking brother!
What spurs transformation and goodness when every facet of this nightmare's design counts on our worst behavior? And in the face of a fate worse than death, what could possibly contribute purpose? The monomyth thrives in fairy tales, mythology, and make-believe. But behind the cold bars of reality, only one story holds water. A passionate conviction in the truth.
Shit!
Ellie? Ellie, are you all right?
Oh my god.
Sam?
Oh no.
Sam? Henry?
If only its overwhelming side effect were anything but hopelessness.
Oh my god.
Whenever I think of The Last of Us, my mind first goes to the fall. It's the shortest stretch of the game, but it's also where the world feels most aligned with the characters and themes. Fall is a time of decay, beautiful for a short few weeks of time, but then it's all gone. The creeping cold, shorter days, and growing distance from summer all hang over the fall chapter's quiet beginning. In its lingering moments of silence for the losses of Sam, Henry, Tess, Sarah, and, for Ellie, Riley. The change of season can't be prevented any more than they could prevent their deaths, and the abject powerlessness of that feeling could only remind me of how it feels to have seasonal depression. The internal emptiness that follows seasonal affective disorder is so accessible in The Last of Us because it is a world of emptiness. The once bustling, but now eerily quiet downtown storefronts of Lincoln. The row of collapsing homes I wandered through in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. Or the lifeless student dorms of Eastern Colorado University, which, for the time I played it, hit closer to home than anything else. Amid every saunter through the nostalgic scenery of my childhood bedroom, the backyard woods and creeks, or my hometown high school, are the melancholic strums of composer Gustavo Santaolla's out-of-tune guitar, invoking the gloom of long-discarded dreams and buried regrets.
Were you married?
For a while.
What happened?
Okay.
Too much?
Too much.
Sometimes, I juxtapose something that can be very, very spiritual and very soothing with something that is very brutal, something that is very rough, I love working with the roughness too, the textures or sounds or noise. All those things, I think, somehow express these contradictions.
Disorder harrows every kitchen and bedroom, while the posters and bookshelves adorning those spaces become overwhelmingly worthless. At worst, the legacy of this cultural obsession with materialism are the treacherous obstacles I must maneuver. While, at best, everything left behind holds little to no value. distractions, just like fantasy and fairy tales, to avoid impending reality.
Is this really all they had to worry about? Boys, movies, deciding which shirt goes with which skirt?
On a trail aligned not with grand purpose, but honest truth, the inevitable and pervasive feeling is one of pointlessness. Why take yet another step when there's no hope that things will get better?
You're looking for the fireflies. They've all left.
Yeah, no shit.
I'm dead. Or I will be soon.
Why look for the light when darkness has always been there for you? And why should we even try to grow when stagnation is so assured? These thoughts prevail in The Last of Us as much as they do in seasonal depression. Life is as pointless as death, while the survivors in between may only take their bitterness out on others.
Bring you the cure from mankind, and you want to play the pissy little brother?
To move on, to truly start something new, demands a detachment with a reality fraught in the old world. The most logical solution for a man so grounded in that reality is to harden his heart, to hope, to stories, and to light, to limit the toll this world might extract, lest he relives the only pain too difficult to bear.
Not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Yet, something tugs at Joel before the end of Jackson. Despite his efforts, he can't abandon a little girl. The trauma that hounds him will not allow it. More so, the father within him will not allow it. Even if there is no point, there's no decency in depriving Ellie of hers. Maybe a deeper, genuinely uplifting truth is on the other side of the darkness. A kind of purpose privy only to the few optimistic and willing to endure the pain. Joel rejoins Ellie and chooses to keep up the search. But Ellie will inherit his darkness.
Joel! Shit. Joel! Here. Oh, get up, get up, get up.
Suddenly, the consequences of a world without a monomyth come screaming to life. The hell of survival, the necessity of unsettling violence, and the crushing void of existence slowly pass, one by one, to Ellie.
Who's there?
We just want to talk.
Any sudden moves and I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for buddy boy over there.
In The Last of Us's harrowing winter chapter, where seasonal depression wreaks its greatest havoc, Ellie, born and raised in a post-cordyceps world, is finally forced to make sense of its overwhelming disorder, underscored by Santolia's turn to amelodic drones and drums. And where you once role-played as Joel, you now role-play as Ellie, a far less equipped, far more vulnerable character.
You know, we do these play tests weekly by the time we wrap up production to make sure people aren't getting stuck at areas and to find bugs. And they would get to that part, and all of a sudden, like, they play differently. Just the way they kind of approached the world was very different for them as this character. And all of a sudden, you create all this new empathy and connection to this character that you didn't have before.
Ellie's vulnerability doesn't just make David and his hunters more terrifying villains, but the fear of being alone more palpable than ever. The horror is real. Ellie's confusion is real. And the implications of the experience are so much worse.
You're a fucking animal.
In Ellie's shoes, the truth The Last of Us was conceived with presumes an entirely new dimension, ignites a conversation metatextual to even McKee's philosophy. The monomyth may thrive only in fantasy and make-believe, but what happens to a world with absolutely no doubts of its vanity? No art, no stories to inspire even a fool's hope and a grand purpose, and no noble mentors, living or dead, to model the importance of virtue. What happens is that the world erodes, person by person, soul by soul. It wasn't any less true when playing as Joel, but it's ever more apparent when playing as Ellie, the next generation, because she directly suffers its consequences. You abhor David's cannibalism for obvious reasons, but in a world whose soul-surviving elders have abandoned most notions of morality, what culturally upheld metric exists to classify his actions as wrong and Joel and Ellie's killings of David's men as right?
And you think we have a choice? Is that it?
Can we even deem the kindest man in our entire journey rotten to the core if he's been nothing but outwardly trusting right until the moment we responded with violence?
Ellie is the little girl that broke your fucking finger!
You might say idealism and morality will persist because they are innate to the soul, regardless of who or what exists to model right and wrong. Then how come this world's most enduring survivors are those with the least notion of it? Those who've been rewarded for leaving their humanity behind. Given enough time, might the only person left on Earth be the human without a soul?
No, wait!
It's not just a crushingly meaningless world. With no culture of virtue to learn from, all choices are meaningless too. All except for the purely primal instinct that renders us all monsters, caged in darkness, incapable of understanding any perspective beyond your own need for survival. Resistance spells certain death, but the truth will cost your soul. In one more fatal blow to the hero's journey, all the trauma, depression, and emptiness that was once only Joel's is handed down to his daughter. Handed down from our elders to you and me.
I dreamt about flying the other night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Go on, tell me about it.
So, I'm on this big plane full of people, and everyone is screaming and yelling because the plane's going down. So I walk to the cockpit, open the door, but there's no pilot. I try to use the controls, but I obviously have no clue how to fly a plane. And right before we crash, I wake up. I've never been on a plane. Isn't that weird?
Well, you know, dreams are weird.
Although the closing spring chapter of The Last of Us plants us closer to our destination than we've ever been, the energy in the air is not full of excitement. In fact, Joel and Ellie's value-charged conditions have seemingly swapped. Joel talks away with infectious glee, but Ellie is quiet as a mouse. The only way she may speak up is through the same button press we've used to interact with collectibles.
That's too small, grave.
I forgot to leave that stupid robot on his grave. What should I do with it?
Ellie.
What?
These smaller, off-the-beaten-path moments, notes, or bits of dialogue are scattered throughout The Last of Us, but they're all optional. Many of them hidden. We could have stepped around every single one, but we can't do that here. At the twilight of our epic journey, it's somehow the small that matters more than ever.
Ellie? Ellie?
What?
To find every small interaction in a single playthrough is arguably the most difficult part of the game. In fact, probably one of the most overlooked factors in The Last of Us's staying power, in its replayability, is all the easily missed moments that take multiple playthroughs to uncover. Even if it's something as incidental as a few seconds of mocap or Ellie humming to herself. There's an undeniable gratification to seeking out these moments. That in a cold and miserable reality, the moments of least significance might ironically cheer us up the most. Contrary to the loud and tragic echo prevalent in the old world's materialism, the path to the light we've looked for is paved by the unspoken beauty of pure nothingness. Free of the burden Joel and Ellie are forced to carry.
You gotta see this.
What is it?
After a solstice of seasonal depression, the persistence of the small inspires the most hopeful light of all. The giraffe moment.
Don't scare it.
Hurry up. Come on.
So fucking cool.
If only that light could last forever.
We don't have to do this. You know that, right? Go back to Tommy's. Just be done with this whole damn thing.
After all we've been through. It can't be for nothing.
If only nothingness was enough. In the poetry of the giraffe moment, a young Ellie still believes there is a grand purpose to her quest. Having endured great transformation and greater sacrifice, she has finally earned the heroic opportunity to save the human race. Because the small is so temporary, so indifferent to her trauma, no single act could give her more hope. But that's not what Joel believes. While Ellie's trauma culminates in the sacrifice of a hero's journey, Joel's trauma grounds him ever more in the truth. When you've been as lost in the darkness as he is, you look for the light, and you hold onto it. When any of us deal with pain or depression as debilitating as Joel's, we don't throw away the first and only thing that gives us a genuine escape. We hold the fuck on. And in a world where the emptiness of the human experience has never been so widely accessible, the boundaries of right and wrong so blurred, and the ensuing tribalism to protect what you still have so fierce, that light can't be given. It can only be taken.
Stop. I get it. But whatever it is you think you're going through right now is nothing to what I have been through.
Darkness makes us desperate. For the cure that will justify countless deaths, and for the daughter that will undo 20 years of suffering. Between that and a fate worse than death, we will always choose ourselves. The effects of worsening poverty, prolonged social isolation, the oppression of authoritarians, and the unrelenting duress of depression, PTSD, and mental illness makes us all desperate, shrouds the optics necessary to maintain steady principles and moral righteousness. No, to survivors like us, preaching the fruits of our better nature is folly. In the end, one thing will always trump our conviction in the hero's journey and a better world for all: our uncompromising need to escape, to leave that dark prison behind us. The ultimate contradiction and the ultimate truth that we dare not admit. For even at the cusp of humanity's greatest gift, we would rather have it all to ourselves than spend one more second reliving a nightmare.
Come on, baby girl. I got you. I got you.
We would doom humanity, watch it burn into chaos for the deep and unconditional love a parent holds for their child. A love beautiful and profound, but one that could compel us to terrible violence. one that prolongs the de-evolution of the world, of hope, and of wisdom, as entirely selfish as it is entirely selfless. We would all do it in Joel's exact same shoes. As the player, we're already halfway there. The only truth more contradictory than that is to lie about it. Miles. By the end of The Last of Us, we've walked almost 3,000 miles in Joel and Ellie's shoes. The bond through which Naughty Dog's gameplay has linked player and character is stronger than ever, and yet we might wish it wasn't. The truth, struck down like a dagger, is never more painful and disturbing than it is in the game's epilogue sequence. Now playing as Ellie following Joel, personifying a generation led astray by its elders, we're met with the tragic lack of agency to undo what's been done. Instead of grand mythic purpose, Ellie finds nothing but a whirlwind of confusion and pain, while Joel finally finds something new.
You keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you said about the Fireflies is true.
Between them, a love duplicitous as it is sincere.
I swear.
Okay.
From all of Naughty Dog's disparate aspirations, the subversion of Campbell's monomyth, the very real trauma we're invited to project on the experience, and the consequences of McKee's truth-telling philosophy, there's no lone writ of harsh truth that prevails in The Last of Us, but a whirlwind of truths. How love, and either one's lack of it or need for it, is bound to make them selfish, hurt others, and destabilize the world. A world where stories and make-believe decline in value so long as they peddle virtue and selflessness. Detached from reality, they serve only as empty escapes. Devices by which a fool might believe the random acts of kindness mean a damn to an overwhelmingly wicked world. When that world eventually scars us, we will fight tooth and nail to save our sanity, even at the risk of fanning the flames, handing down the burden, and becoming something that will destroy us. But most of all, because these truths are so difficult and fly so defiantly in the face of unbridled heroism or selfless sacrifice, as countless generations have glorified since the dawn of humanity, we've never had a greater need for a lie. The lie you tell your surrogate daughter to hide the ugly truth. The lie you tell yourself about the decency of your actions to avoid not just the selfishness latent in them, but the bleak reality you'll be stranded in without that lie. The lies in our storytelling, in the power of growth, transformation, and world-saving heroism, despite how rarely they manifest or give structure to our reality. And the lies that get us through our darkest waking days. Even when there is no point, no happiness, and no hope, we find a way to tell ourselves that everything will be all right. That there is always something worth fighting for. The truth matters, no matter how much it stings, implicates us all as hypocrites, or dooms us to a chaotic existence. The truth, with all its frightening contradictions, matters. But lies matter too, a contradiction in itself. Yin and yang, fire and water, darkness and light, and Joel and Ellie. Both in a balance so very hard to grasp, yet never entirely out of reach. The brilliance of The Last of Us is in its beautiful duality of enlightening truth and enchanting lie. A clairvoyant vision of a world more like our own than we're willing to admit, where two forces may collide, skirmish, and contradict each other to the end of our days. It brings us to the light, yet demystifies none of the human experience. When we sit down and decide to immerse ourselves in the lives of Joel and Ellie once again, we might not be looking for any one thing in particular, but every pregnant feeling, moment, and pause all together. We want to find ourselves there, and everything these moments, places, and lives reveal, as much as we want to be lost in The Last of Us. Welcome to the end of the video. Thank you so much for getting here. Before you click off and those media credits start scrolling up the screen, there is a couple of things I'd like to tell you guys about, starting with Lost in Cult. Lost in Cult is a print publication based in the UK that's created a number of journals and deep dives into different facets of gaming culture. They're entirely crowdfunded, and all their work is absolutely beautiful. In Lock On, their marquee product, you'll find full-page spreads of the most mesmerizing gaming-related artwork right alongside enriching essays and interviews. Needless to say, when Lost in Cult reached out to me a few months ago, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever been asked to promote for a video. Volume 5 of Lock On is really cool. A lot of it is about The Last of Us and has cover art by Jake Kanto, who did the box art for Uncharted Legacy of Thieves. But right now, Lost in Cult is also preparing to launch their next campaign for a handheld history 88 to 95 on March 7th. It's an even deeper dive into video game console history than their first handheld history from last year, and it will be available to pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and more. If you want to support Lost in Cult, check out my affiliate link in the description below and give them a follow on their socials. Thank you, Lost in Cult, and thank you guys for watching the entire video once again. Going into this, my goal was to get a video that was going to be shorter than an hour, and though we came a lot closer than I sort of hoped at the beginning of the process, it counts, and it definitely made a difference for me, having made these really long videos over the last 2 years, and this one actually was a bit of a relief that it wasn't pushing the same length as a lot of those other videos. So I really do hope that you connect with it and you enjoy it. It's a bit of a different take on The Last of Us than kind of how I approached the second game. But that also just comes with having analyzed so many different pieces of media over the last, 2-3 years since making that video. Invariably, I'm gonna come at this differently, and I came at it in a way that I was really happy with and was true to the experience that I've always had with The Last of Us, while I think says something maybe new or different that you don't typically get on YouTube. So All that being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed. I don't foresee any other Last of Us videos in the near future, although this video has made me curious about doing a new video on part 2, sort of like an updated look at the game. But because of how many things are sort of in demand to talk about on my channel right now, I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon. So what I will be doing somewhat soon, without telling you exactly what it is, this was a video that has been requested on my channel for a long time. Since I made that video on part 2, of course, people have been asking for a video on this game. There's another video that I've directly said I was going to make around the same time as that Last of Us video, but to this day, I still haven't. Well, my next video is that video. It's a video that I promised a long time ago, and if you know me well enough, and you know my videos well enough, you might have an idea of what that video is. So I'll just be a tease about that for now, but yeah, it'll be also hopefully another video under an hour like this video was. So definitely stay tuned for that. My personal hope is the wait for it won't be long, but again, we'll see what happens. Other than that, you guys can support me on Patreon. The link to my Patreon is in the description below. There is 2 tiers, one in which you get access to pretty much all of the sort of written blog posts, and then there's a second tier in which you get access to that plus a lot of the video posts, which include behind the scenes commentaries for all of my videos, including this one, come probably a week or 2 when I get around to doing it, and some deep dives into editing, which is something that I'm going to start doing on Patreon for the first time, is do featurettes that show you how I edit my videos. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff over there. Definitely please consider supporting the page. All of it helps me out in some way or form. It's very appreciated. Other than that, you can follow me on Twitter at ParksHarmon. Follow me on Instagram as ParksHarmon. And I believe that's the main socials there. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head that I need to be saying other than endure and survive. Friends, it's a rough world out there, but nevertheless, we have each other, for better or worse, and we make do. And I don't know what I'm doing right now, but yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.